It is my pleasure to introduce this evening somebody who's been an advocate of the Newton series and a fairly frequent guest. Since July of 2018, Dean Tsu-Jae Liu has been the first female dean of the UC Berkeley College of Engineering. Under her leadership this year, we're welcoming a record number of new Berkeley engineering students. In fact, a 20% increase from last year, from 35 countries and 31 states. She's made diversity, inclusion, respect for women and members of underrepresented minorities in engineering a true focus. And the new class includes a record increase in the number of students from underrepresented minorities and first-generation college students. Lest you think as a dean, Dean Liu has always been an academic, despite the fact that she has a BS, an MS, and a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford. She's also worked at some of the Valley's most innovative companies in the most innovative environments. She holds 96 patents in the field of integrated circuit devices and technologies, and she'll be moderating this evening for our Newton Distinguished Innovator keynote. Dean Liu.
All right, thanks very much, Vicki, and good evening, everyone. Sorry for that delay. I'm really thrilled that so many of you are able to join us tonight. I hope that this kickoff of the Newton series will help to make you feel like more excited about the semester rather than anxious about your courses, because we have so much to offer here in the college. A lot of our faculty have worked hard to help ensure that you will have a good learning experience even while you're remote from the campus. So it's wonderful that we have Padmasree Warrior joining us this evening to kick off the Newton lecture series. One of you had asked the history behind this series. This series is named for a former dean of engineering, Richard Newton. He was an entrepreneur as well as a really outstanding leader in academia. Now, Padma is the founder, president, and CEO of Fable Group, which is a curated reading platform focused on improving mental wellness. She also serves on the board of directors for a couple of companies, Microsoft and Spotify. Tonight, she'll be sharing with us her career story and insights for success. Her life story begins in Vijayawada. Did I say that correctly? Which is a small city in southern India, where Padma was born and raised. She has shared with me that when she was a child, she loved to read books. This helped to relieve her boredom and stress. And it's this love of reading and stories that influenced her to start the company that she now heads. Now, Padma attended school in Vijayawada and then went on to earn her bachelor's degree in chemical engineering at the Indian Institute of Technology, this is in India, and then her master's degree in chemical engineering at Cornell University in the US. Since she graduated, she's been enjoying a successful career in the tech industry and moving up to the executive suite, so executive positions at a number of companies. She was at Motorola, a chief technology officer and executive vice president, and more recently at Cisco, where she was chief technology and strategy officer and also a strategic advisor. Now, she's familiar with entrepreneurship and so on. When she was at Cisco, Padma helped the company to thrive as a over $100 billion company and grow through acquisitions. This is one way to expand company operations. And she oversaw 6 acquisitions in the year 2014 and 10 acquisitions in 2013. So that's quite a large number of companies to be acquired in such a short period of time. In 2015, Padma switched and she joined an electric autonomous vehicle startup company called NIO, and that's based in China, where she served as CEO and Chief Development Officer of the company. In 2018, Padma was named to Forbes' list of America's top 50 women in tech, and she's used the insight that she has gained over the years to mentor and encourage other people in tech, including many women. And if you're interested, after hearing her story tonight, if you want to keep up with her, you can join her 1.4 million Twitter followers. Her handle is @Padmarasi. Padma Shri. So it's just her first name. Please join me now in welcoming Padma Warrior.
Thank you, Sujay, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I hear there are several people from different time zones. It's my pleasure to speak with all of you today. Unfortunately, we can't do this face to face. I was looking forward to doing this in the auditorium, meeting people, but the advantage is now we can have people join remotely, perhaps that couldn't have been there physically in person. So yeah, what I thought I would do today is to share with you my journey, how I started as a student all the way to having a fairly successful career in the tech industry, and now more recently being an entrepreneur. And at the end of my presentation, I'm happy to take questions. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Just give me one moment. Great. Hopefully everyone can see this. So yeah, I grew up in a very small town in southern part of India. I saw from the chat that there are some people in this class that are also from Vijayawada. It's, as you can see from the picture that I'm showing here, this is the town that I grew up in. It's on the banks of a river. And one of my favorite hobbies as a kid used to be to walk along this bridge. And the reason I'm showing you this picture is as I was walking along this bridge that was built across the river as a little kid, I used to always wonder how that bridge was built. And my dad used to tell me that, you know, the people that sort of were responsible for building these bridges and all this construction were engineers. And so I think probably that triggered an interest in engineering for me. But one of the things I will share with you, when I was a kid, I had to be homeschooled because I had severe asthma. So not dissimilar to what we are going through, unfortunately, these days. I literally had to bring lessons home and study. And so that's sort of like my experience growing up. I would say for the first few years of school, I went through that. But one of the big things that taught me is how do you simplify complex subjects into key messages? Because I only had limited time with my teachers because they were remote and I was being homeschooled because of my illness. So the point of telling you that is throughout these sometimes hardships that we go through in life, we also learn certain things. And that skill, I would say, stayed with me to the point it actually helps me quite a bit in my career. When you are an engineer and you're leading large organizations with engineers, one of the things you have to quickly learn is to simplify complexity in the problem that you're solving in order to arrive at the solution. So that was my lesson learned through my childhood years. After that, as Dean Liu mentioned, I went to the Indian Institute of Technology in New Delhi. It's a fairly intense technical school. You know, probably I would say as tough as to get into as Berkeley is. And by the way, congrats to all of you for being at Berkeley. What an honor to all of you. But I went to IIT in Delhi. When I started school there, I was one of 5 women in a class of 250. So women in engineering back then was even rarer than it is now. I hope to see more and more women join engineering, not only at school, but continue to have great careers in engineering. So yeah, I joined as a chemical engineering student, and I would say did reasonably well. I went into IIT thinking I was super smart and very quickly realized that there's so many smart people. So I quickly learned to be humble and realize that you actually learn from your peers who are smarter maybe than you are. But the other thing I learned in my undergrad was how to be really organized. I noticed in the survey, a lot of you said one of the things you're most worried about is how to manage all of the classwork that you have, and to do that remotely, at least for the next several months. One of my tips would be make sure you're organized and keep your work organized as much as you can. That definitely helped me get through my undergrad. So I finished my undergrad and then came to the US to go to graduate school at Cornell. in upstate New York. And I don't know if anybody is from upstate New York or from the New York area. And I came from Delhi to go to New York and never seen snow before. And I came in the fall semester to Cornell, and it was so beautiful, the campus, and then came winter. So went through a big shock at Cornell, but I actually at Cornell learned to be really independent. And also learned the value of taking courses across different disciplines. So although my major was chemical engineering, I took courses in electrical engineering, electronics, material science. And I think that diversity of having a mixed set of curriculum helped me later in my career. So I think if you do get an opportunity to do that in Berkeley, you should definitely consider that. So if I look back now during my student life, I would say everything from high school to graduate school. I would summarize my key learnings in these five bullets. First, one of the things that I realized during my student years is you have to discover what you love. And that can change, by the way. I started off at IIT as a physics major, and then 6 months, I think less than a year, about 6 months into the curriculum, I realized I really wanted to be an engineer, and I wanted to really be in chemical engineering, primarily because of my interest in materials. And so I switched majors and moved to study chemical engineering. The other thing I think a key learning for me as a student is you make friends in college that stay friends, that will stay your friends for life. I think these are, I'm sure you probably are tired of everybody telling you these are best years of your life, but that's very true. In my case, I actually met my husband in college in undergrad, and we've stayed together for a very, very long time. And so I think take this opportunity to make friends and make sure you stay in contact with them. The other thing I did, I think as a student, which really helped me even later on in my career, is I learned how to really explore. In my case, I moved from India to go to graduate school, to come to the US to go to graduate school. It was somewhat of a traumatic experience because it was like a different country and I was leaving my family behind, and, physically packing up and moving to a completely different country to go to school. But at the same time, I think it taught me the value of exploring, learning a new culture at the same time you're learning different things within your curriculum. The next thing related to that is a big learning is never to quit. Things will get tough. We're all going through a very difficult time right now, and sometimes it feels overwhelming and we want to quit. One thing I learned as a student, maybe because I didn't really have a choice. I came here as a graduate student. I really didn't have any money. I came with $100 and a one-way ticket, as I say, often to people. And so I had to make sure that I was successful at school. And a community of friends actually helped me get through school and make sure that I'm enjoying the process as well. But the key thing is not to give up. It's normal to feel overwhelmed at times and feel anxious about your classes. That's normal. Don't let that get to you. The next thing I would say that was a key learning for me is the power of a community. In my case, it was a support group of women in engineering. Whatever your interests are, make sure you belong to these different communities outside of your curriculum, your academic curriculum, because these communities can actually give you an outlet to relax and help you, therefore, to come back to your academics in a much stronger way. So those are my key learnings during my student years. Then I want to briefly share with you my story as a professional. I kind of look back on my career in 3 different chapters, if you will. My first chapter was in Motorola. I think like Sujay, like Dean Liu, I started in the semiconductor industry in Motorola Semiconductors and then switched to become the Chief Technology Officer of Motorola Corporation. And the big learning during that time was really how to lead global teams. Motorola was one of the few companies, this was in the early 80s, that had a global focus. And I had an R&D team as the Chief Technology Officer. I had engineers in 52 different countries around the world. And so it really taught me how to understand dealing with people's diverse views from where they come from, yet work together as a team. Then I switched careers and moved to Silicon Valley to become the Chief Technology and Strategy Officer at Cisco. Cisco, as you know, is a very large networking and data center company. I started there as a Chief Technology Officer, and when I left, I was a Chief Technology and Strategy Officer. So I had two big roles. I ran the enterprise business, so I was very focused on customers. I would say my tenure at Cisco, which was about 8 years, taught me the value of being customer focused, especially when you're selling products and solutions in the enterprise space. That's really important. You know, many of you will be building products in your careers. It's really important to understand what the market needs and what the customers need as you think about developing solutions. And then most recently, I worked for a Chinese company called NIO. We were a global startup, and meaning that we had teams in different countries, all building the company at the same time. In Beijing and in Shanghai, we had large teams that were building the car itself. I started the team here in San Jose in Silicon Valley, building all of the autonomous technology and the software and the component technology that went into the car. And then in Europe, we had a design team that was designing the car. I have to say it was very, very challenging to really build a company at the same time in so many different locations. So yeah, I spent about 3 years there. We built the company literally up from scratch and took it public. It's now a public company in New York Stock Exchange doing really well. And the experience there, I think at NIO, I learned how to sort of be an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur at a global scale, which is very interesting. And I left NIO at the end of 2018 because I started to get interested in what I'm doing now, which is trying to apply technology in a unique way to address things like mental health. So that sort of brings me to share with you my learnings as a tech leader. So I've had about almost 30 years, 3 decades of career in the tech industry. So some of the key learnings, first thing, if you are going to choose to have a career in the tech industry, which I hope all of you do, we need lots of smart engineers to continue to innovate and continue to grow how technology changes people's lives. But the one important thing you must remember always is to be a lifelong learner. You will never know all the answers when you're dealing with technology, right? It changes so fast, and we have to constantly be willing to learn to keep up with the changes. So that's something that I learned in my career, and I hope you all keep that in mind as you start your journey in technology with your engineering and beyond. The second thing for me that helped me with my career is the fact that I moved industries and moved domains. I started in the semiconductor industry, then went to the mobile industry, then to the cloud and networking enterprise, and then to building cars. And now I'm building a consumer tech company. I think that when you move industries and when you move domains, it really adds to your perspective and to your experiences and helps you strengthen your resume. And so that's really, really key in advancing your career in the tech industry, or actually any industry, I would say. The next thing is to learn how to lead across boundaries. So what does that mean? If you're pursuing an engineering degree, make sure you understand the business sides of things. Make sure you do take some classes like this one or courses to understand how an entrepreneur builds a company. You know, what does it take to get a product out the door? Understanding different boundaries of everything that you're going to be doing is super important. And doing so to scale, to be able to scale the solution that you're working on to a global level is really important as well. The last two, I would say, are more recent. In the last 5 years, maybe, I think we've become much more aware of this, but I do want to emphasize this. We need to really, as technologists and engineers, understand the implications of what we are developing so that we can create a positive impact with technology, right? Sometimes technology can be a double-edged sword. It can be used for good. It can also be used for bad things. And so as creators of technologies, as engineers, as scientists, it's our responsibility to make sure we are really looking at how we apply technology from all angles and understand the implications of how we are developing that so that we can create a positive impact. A positive impact can be measured in terms of the value it's creating for people that are using those products. And so that's, I would say, a responsible way of developing technology or being responsible as technologists for our actions and for our innovations. The last point, especially now, leading with empathy, and empathy, understanding how your peers are feeling, how your friends are feeling, how your family is feeling during times of stress and uncertainty is very, very important. As a leader, if you're going to be leading teams of people or leading projects, it's really important that you focus on the people that are working with you as much as the solutions that you're building. People matter at the end. And, this is one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is the people I hire are going to help me scale this company, help me build this company. So I have to invest the time in understanding their needs and what matters to them. So that's, I think, a key learning as well. The last two bullets, as I said, are probably more important now than they have ever been. And so I would encourage all of you to be thinking through that. So my next chapter, what am I up to now? I just recently, about a year ago, started a company. It's called Fable. So Fable's mission is to help all of us focus on mental wellness. So we're not a healthcare company, but we really think of physical fitness and how wellness and fitness helps us physically stay active and healthy. So Fable's mission is to do that towards mental wellness. So why did I do this? Why did I start this company? Why did I leave Neo? I think that was one of the questions you all had submitted. Because towards the end of my time at Neo, I really started to get interested in mental wellness. And I don't know if you know these statistics, but they're actually quite interesting and almost alarming at the same time. And this is, by the way, all of this data is pre-COVID, pre the last 8 months of all the change we've all been going through, right? So, but there is data that says in the last decade, if in the last 10 years, anxiety and depression have gone up 15 to 20% globally. So it could be because we are now more open about talking about mental health, saying we're anxious. I'm really glad we did that survey, and I'm really glad a lot of you were open about what is causing you anxiety. It's good to talk about it and good to say that it's okay to be not okay. But regardless, we are seeing a rise in anxiety and depression. World Economic Forum estimates that globally we are losing almost $16 trillion in economic output due to mental health related disorders, right? So these could be things that are affecting all of us in the work we do. It could also be related to something that actually keeps us away from working. So that's a huge number over a 20-year period. So it's not just a feel-good thing, it's actually an economic impact, if we don't address this. And in the US, the healthcare spend due to workplace related stress is close to $190 billion. So the numbers are mind-blowing. Today, if you compare mental wellness to physical wellness, physical fitness is almost a $4 trillion industry. That includes everything from Peloton to all the equipment we use to work out, whatever we do to take care of our bodies, but the same amount of effort is not placed on our minds and our brains. And I think this is going to get even more important. So yeah, I started to get interested in this about year and a half ago. I spent time pretty much by myself as a sole entrepreneur for about 6 months researching this and researching what could be some interesting solutions. And the solutions vary all the way from listening to music. Listening to music helps us relax. I was reading all the music recommendations. By the way, I'm on the board of Spotify, so hopefully you're all listening to music on your Spotify. But yeah, listening to music definitely helps us relax, right? And then reading and meditation have a lot more impact than even listening to music in terms of helping us relax, helping us calm down. A lot of people don't know this actually. But reading, and especially reading fiction, if you're reading a story, our brain is keeping track of the characters, keeping track of the storyline. So it helps us alleviate our anxiety, our depression, our stress, and rewires our brain for greater intelligence and empathy. And sometimes people think reading is really strenuous and time consuming. But if you just read 15 minutes a day, you'll finish a book at an average, average of 300 words per minute. You'll finish a book roughly every month. And there is a paper from Yale, sponsored by the National Institute of Health, that talks about how people who read 30 minutes of fiction a day have a higher probability of better mortality, meaning they live longer. So it was fascinating to me that this was all there, and yet a lot of people don't read. And so I started Fable primarily to help people make reading a healthy habit. Just like we today make physical fitness a healthy habit, what could we do? So we are doing that. One of the other problems with reading is there's so many books that people are confused what books they should read. So we curate our book selections, and we every month select 30 books that we think are super interesting, based on different topics, based on what's happening in the society. And we're building a new kind of a social platform where people can build can actually read together. So think of it as a massive digital book club. It's sort of like a social with a purpose. So yeah, that's what I am doing now. So this journey is about being an entrepreneur, and it's very different than leading a large group in a large company. At Cisco, I had 26,000 engineers working for me in my team. Same thing at Motorola. Now we're a company of about 10 to 12 people. So it's very, very different. People always ask me, what's the difference between being in a large company and starting your own company, which is more fun? I would say starting your own company is definitely more fun, but it's also a lot more work. And you have to be prepared for a lot of ups and downs as an entrepreneur. So yeah, that's sort of what my career is all about. I think in the next few slides, I want to talk about you, because, I think you are here. It's a very interesting time we're all in. I don't think anybody expected, looking back a year ago, none of us would have predicted this year is going to turn out to be the way it is turning out to be. So I would really encourage all of you, first and foremost, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stressed out, pay attention to what your body and your mind are telling you. I would say anxiety, stress, like as I pointed out, are today's burning platform for all of us, and it's normal, but we do need to pay attention to that and take care of ourselves. The other tip I would give you is find small moments to enjoy. These are sort of like interesting times we're in, but it is the best years of your life. So you have to be resilient and get through these strange times, and we will. Hopefully we'll see an end to this distance learning, social distancing, and get back to some kind of normalcy. It may not be completely back to the way it was for a while. The other thing I would say is belong to your community, go find other interests besides academics, and be active in that community. There will be many things that will be different in future. So I think you get a chance to belonging to a community so that you can shape that change. I would say those things are important. Then I also put together this list of tips that have helped me get through. Frankly, I think this last 10 months have been tough for me as well. And I made mistakes. And so these are things that I've made mistakes and learned and corrected along the way. One of the first things I would say you must do, must do, especially if you're saying you're overwhelmed by the fact that you have to manage courses, so many courses and classes remotely. Set yourself a daily routine. It's really important. I didn't do this when I first started to work from home and we were starting to shelter. I was sort of like all over. I was very chaotic. I was jumping from one thing to another, and I found like either I was working all the time and burning out, or I was not working, and so neither was good. So now I pretty much have a routine that I set for myself. And then in the routine, make sure you're building in micro breaks. I set myself like 10 to 15 minute breaks on my calendar so that I'm not constantly in front of a screen going from one Zoom meeting to another Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams meeting. It's important that you build in these micro breaks and take advantage of those micro breaks. In other words, don't just put a break and then waste that time. Use that break to step outside, just go outside, get some sun, get some air, fresh air, go for a short walk, read a little bit, read your favorite book, your favorite story, play a game, do something that allows you to break up the monotony of constantly being online. Eat healthy. I think while we're at home, there's a resistance to snack all the time. So resist that temptation and eat healthy. Fifth point, super important, don't be lonely. I know it's hard when we're all remote to try to make friends, right? That's actually the beauty of the college experience is being together, making new friends. And so you have to be creative how you do this. But make sure you do that and call your old friends, make new friends. It's easy sometimes if you're alone at home and just working to get lonely. So make sure you are focusing on that. Connect with people with an intent, have a purpose for why you're connecting with people versus just mindlessly scrolling social media, which actually creates more anxiety for us. Then I would say the next important thing is don't be too hard on yourself. It's normal to feel overwhelmed. It's okay. I think it's okay. Like I said, accept that and talk about it and you'll get over that. Stay active, get involved with the causes that matter to you most. And last but not least, wear a mask when you're outside and vote. November is going to be a big event for those of us who are in the US, who are US citizens and can vote. Take that seriously. So that's all I had to share with you today. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to all of you. Like I said, I wish I could have done this in person, but I'm happy to take any questions that you may have, and we'll make the best of being online.
Thanks so much, Padma. That was wonderful. I mean, just a lot of good practical advice and insights into what it takes to be a successful leader in the tech industry. So thank you. What I'd like to do is many students submitted some questions in advance, so I'd like to sort of go through some of those that you didn't cover in your story, but there are some questions that are asked live here that are directly pertaining to what you just covered with regard to Fable. So I guess there are some questions about like this reading. This is interesting because a lot of us, I'm sure, are binge watching on Netflix, right? So does reading fiction do more than watching fiction? That was a question that somebody asked me.
Yeah, according to science, reading is the most impactful. And if you're able to read, that's when the way your brain, and I'm not an expert on this. I've read papers that other experts have written on the topic. But basically, when you're reading, the way your brain processes information, it's actually most effective in allowing you to leave whatever's causing you stress and go into a different mode almost. It's sort of like I say, reading stories is the oldest form of virtual reality, right? It sort of like takes you to a different place. The next best is listening to a story, so audiobooks. And if you're listening to a story, that's the next best thing. Watching, it comes after that. So although we're all binging shows because it's easy, it's not as effective in terms of helping us relax, but it's definitely probably more effective than doing nothing. So I always think of it as like running a marathon, going for a walk and sitting on your couch, right? There's a gradation for all these.
All right, great. Okay, so I'll give students a chance to ask their questions live in a few minutes, but I thought it's only fair to ask questions that students took the time to submit in advance. So let's go back to your school days. Did you gain experience working in the industry before you graduated? Is work experience important? A lot of our students today in the summertime do go on internships, or they can take more classes. So what would be your advice there?
Yeah, I think definitely doing an internship helps because you will learn how to apply it and what it means to be in a team that's working on interesting things. I have to say, in all my companies, I've always made it a point. At NEO, for example, we hired a lot of interns, and the interns did some of the best work. I think you sometimes feel like you're there only for a short period of time. What value could you possibly create? But you would be surprised. So I would encourage all of you to do internships, depending on your field. But I would say by and large, I would encourage internships. But there is if there's a particular class you want to take, in other words, like if you want to diversify from your main academic degree and maybe take a business class or an entrepreneurship class, and summer is a good time to do that too. It really depends on your goals, but I would say if you're getting a great internship, go for it.
Great, thanks. Okay, because of limited time, I'm going to move on to the next category, which is your industry career. How did you, what were keys to your success to climbing the corporate ladder, the management ladder? And did you actually aim to become a CEO eventually? How did that come about?
Yeah, I don't think I ever had a plan for my career, in the sense that I don't think I said to myself, okay, 2 years I'm going to be here, 4 years I'm going to be there, etc. What helped me, I think, grow a lot in my career is the fact that I took advantage of opportunities that I saw. I kind of went after opportunities, and sometimes we hold ourselves back. And I say I push myself to do that. And so when I tell people, when you see a door open, go through it. You don't know what's on the other side till you go through it. So yeah, I think that helped me in my career. So definitely, like, for example, when I was an engineer, I saw an opportunity to become a technical leader. So I went and talked to my boss and said, I want to be a technical leader. Then from there, I became a manager and a VP. And so as I saw opportunities, I put my name in the hat and made sure that I got the job, right? Like I always tell people, sometimes people hesitate. I tell people, don't hesitate before you get the job, and then you have an option to decide whether you want it or not.
Okay, that's great. So one of your advice for students is, don't quit. How about in industry? Maybe do you have an example of what was the most a difficult situation or challenge that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, no, definitely applies to industry as well. So I went through what a lot of parents go through as well. When my son was born, my son is now in LA, but when he was born, it's very difficult to be a new parent and have a career and work. And we all put all this pressure on ourselves to be perfect at everything. And we can be, right? You have to give up something or the other. So there was a time I felt like I can't deal with this. It's just so much, too many things are happening. And I was about to quit. And I was like, I'm going to quit working and I'll just stay home and take care of my son. And I have to say my boss at the time and my husband were both against that, and told me just keep going, it'll be fine, your kid will be fine. And so, yeah, I think several times during my career, I felt like being a parent and having a career were pulling me in different directions, and I had to give up one in order to be better at the other. And the reality is that you don't have to. I think you will figure out how to make it work. You won't be perfect. Like every day I'm not a perfect mom, and every day I'm maybe not a perfect manager, but it's okay. I think that's what life is, right? Like some days you compromise and you make decisions, and yeah, I'm glad I didn't actually. And I now tell people, don't let, sometimes life throws curveballs at us and things get to be too much. And we are tempted to give up one or the other, but actually my work, I would say, kept me sane and made me even maybe be a better mom.
Yeah, I would also say that being a parent probably helps to make you a better manager.
That's right, very much so. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it is very helpful to have a supportive partner in life. Right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the
very true. Yeah.
practical advice is it helps to have a very supportive, partner.
Yeah, and you have to share, right? Like you share all the chores and the tasks and all the mundane things you have to do in life too.
Right. Okay. Now, some students are interested in your experience as a board of directors, member of a board of directors. Can you maybe tell us how you came to join the board of Microsoft and also Spotify?
Yeah. in both cases, I knew the companies really well even before I went on the board. So being a board of director is very different from being on the management team. Like, you know, your job as a board member is to help the management team run the company. It's not to run the company. And so when you are in a leadership role, often the mistake most people make when they go on a board is they start micromanaging the company, and you can't do that, right? You know, you have to help the management team with what they're doing, and you're there to ask challenging questions, to push them to think differently, and to support them where they need support. One of the important things when, you know, I think in becoming a board member is to make sure you know the company really well. You have to take extra time to know their products, understand their strategy. So it's not just going to board meetings, but it's going to strategy meetings. It's going to their technology reviews. So you have to like really make sure you're conversant in the company's products and what they're doing. And so both in the case of Microsoft and Spotify, I felt like with my experience in the tech industry, I could contribute a lot to what that board needed. So I got selected through the formal nomination process the companies usually have. But I think having expertise where the company feels you as a board member bring a different perspective, complement the other board members, and understand their business deeply. That is, I think, what has helped me in joining those two boards.
Okay, so your experience working for a variety of companies actually helps to make you a better board of directors member.
Yeah, I would say so, definitely.
Okay. Now I skipped over your experience with NIO. There's a question about, so what do you think about the future of electric cars, specifically self-driving electric cars? Do you think those will eventually replace, well, I guess Uber's going to adopt that.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, the future of self-driving electric vehicles.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of electric cars. I have one, and I loved working at NIO. I thought what we were building there, what the company is still building, is very important for the future. I think not just from an environment perspective, but actually the fact that when we're building an electric car, you know, one of the key things is it's much simpler to build than a mechanical car, because there's just it's much, as an engineer, if you're a mechanical engineer, you'll know this, the complexity is a lot less in an electric car than it is in an internal combustion vehicle. So it's a lot less parts, the cost is less in building it. Therefore, a lot of things you were doing through mechanical systems and hybrid systems, now you can do through software and firmware. So therefore, you can actually have additional functionality in an electric car beyond the fact that it's an electric car, right? So often people think about an electric car, you know, just as an environmental benefit. What we don't realize is actually you can use software to control a lot of mechanical systems, and therefore it improves the efficiency of the car, and you get a lot of user features that you can't get on a mechanical car. So for all those reasons, think of it as like a computer on wheels almost, right? You can update the software, you can, launch new features through over-the-air updates, you can, just like your phone does today. So lots of things become much more efficient in the case of an electric car. So for all those reasons, I'm a big fan. And self-driving cars, definitely we will see high levels of automation, meaning more and more things that we as drivers do today will be taken over by computers in the car. Where we'll get to fully autonomous level 5, as it's called, vehicles all over. Yeah, I think that's a while away, ways away, but we'll definitely see those in the future as well.
Excellent. Okay, so I do want to, I think some of the questions from the students actually are relating to Fable. So why don't we just transition to questions that, and I think you can see them too, Padma, but basically students get to upvote the questions. So the questions which have the most votes, I think probably fair for you to answer questions according, in that sequence. So should we allow the students to actually ask verbally the questions here, Vicki? I mean, just to give you, to make it more interesting.
Yeah, in fact, what I'm going to go ahead and do, I've asked some students and they're willing to be brave. So part of this
Great.
class, Padma and Dean Liu, is that students possibly introduce speakers or even ask questions live, and you can write in the questions. But I've had 3 or 4 students who would love to ask a question live, and I'm going to bring them in as panelists. The first person I'm going to bring in is Lillian Wang, who has a question, and then I have a few others who I'm going to bring in. Let's see how quickly I can do this, though. And if any of my fellow panelists can do it faster than I can, please feel free to do that. So Lillian, get ready to come on in.
As well, cue them up. Lillian, and then Abby, and then Pamela.
I'm going to ask Lillian, Abby, then I've Tristan, and I've got Wei.
Okay.
Lillian, will
All
you put your screen on when you come in?
Yes. Sorry, my hair is a mess. I'm so sorry.
Right. This is gotta bring your full self.
Born with. Well, anyways, thank you guys so much for having me here. This is actually a question for Warrior. So what is your advice for aspiring entrepreneurs and product managers who don't have a technical background, but also want to tap into the tech industry? Hence, it's non-tech roles in tech.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a big need for non-tech roles in the tech industry. Like my company, Fable, for example, we hire writers, we hire editorial, because our product is really stories, right? You know, selecting great stories, and then we're building a social platform around that, you know. So I would say make sure you're familiar with, if you want to be a product manager, the key thing is to prioritize features. One of the big things that a lot of companies struggle with is there's just so many things you can do, and you don't want the product, you don't want your product to be like a little bit of everything and be very confusing, right? And so you as a product manager, one of the big things you will do is to prioritize the features, understand what users want, how are they reacting to it. So this is all non-technical. Actually, engineers are usually not good at doing that kind of stuff. And, you know, designers, I think that's another great field to look at. You know, user interface, user experience design is a huge, huge deal, especially on the mobile product side. You know, how do you make sure, because you have such limited real estate in a mobile device, how do you design for that? So design, product management, editorial skills, moderation now, you know, big, huge deal. Look at Facebook and how they're, you know, really figuring out human moderation is much more effective. And so doing that, data scientists, finance, so so many different fields have to be brought into building a company. So.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Maybe Abby Steffens. Abby, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, Padma. You're like such an inspiration. Thank you for coming. And I really am like so inspired by you like creating a company about mental wellness. So I was wondering, like with all the different pursuits that you take on, how do you manage your own mental wellness?
Such a great question. So yeah, I mean, if I meditate every day. I have done it now for 27 years. I know the exact date because my son is now 27. I started meditating when he was born. In the beginning, I couldn't sit still for like even 30 seconds because we're all like type A people. And I was always like, go, go, go. I was like, well, I can't do this. But now I do it for 20 minutes. I read a lot. As I was saying, I have built into my daily routine at least 4 15-minute slots during the day where I read. I read in the morning before I start work. I read at lunchtime. I read at the end of the day, and I read before I go to bed. And each time it's only 15 minutes, so that really helps me. I love to paint, and so that's another way for me to sort of like help relax and take care of my mental wellness. So experiment with different art techniques. I post my artwork on Instagram. So those are things that help me relax. But such a great question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Wei, do you want to ask a question next? Wei Huang?
Yes. Oh, could you hear me?
Yeah.
And you want to put your video on? It's up to you.
Oh, okay.
Be brave.
Hi.
Hi, Wei.
Hi. Thank you for sharing your valuable story and your experience. You said that reading is meaningful and important. So could you just give us some recommendation or like what kind of fiction do you often read? Thank you.
Yes, great question. So right now I am reading two books. I'm reading a book called Lovecraft Country. It's written by an author called Matt Ruff. It's actually an HBO show. So I'm watching the show. It's a brand new HBO show. So it's a great show, by the way. And it's a sort of like a science fiction, fantasy fiction, and reality kind of a book. So I'm reading that. I just finished reading Where Did You Go, Bernadette? It's a story set in Seattle. About a mom and daughter and their relationship, and kind of touches the tech industry because the husband is a data scientist at Microsoft. So I read that, and I'm reading also a science fiction book by my favorite author, N.K. Jemisin, called The City We Became. So I kind of tend to read multiple books at the same time, and so those are great books depending on your taste. But once Fable launches, we'll have lots of recommendations on Fable.
Thank you.
Tristan, I'm wondering if you'd like to go next. Tristan Cox.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much for coming out today, Padma. It's been awesome to hear your story. And yeah, speaking of hearing everywhere you've lived and worked, I'm assuming you've picked up a couple languages over the years. Have there been any unexpected benefits of being multilingual in your career?
So obviously I speak several Indian languages. I speak English. I learned a little bit of Spanish. I tried to learn Mandarin, but it was really hard. I gave up. I know a few words. I would say more than the language advantage, having lived and worked in different places, understanding the cultural nuances really helped me in my career, right? You know, the fact that I was chosen to go work at NEO. A lot of the fact that when I was at Motorola, I led teams in China. That helped me like understand how to work across different boundaries. So if you do get an opportunity to work with teams that are international or be part of teams that are international, take advantage of that. That I think definitely helped me in my career.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think the next question is from, is it Rusha or Rucha?
Yeah, hi, it's Rucha.
Rucha.
Yeah, hi Padma. Thanks so much for I really was actually really inspired by your ideas for Fable and just like your outlook on just like personal growth and like academic and like professional growth as well. So I'm interested in the leadership part of the tech industry. So I was just wondering what your advice was for becoming a leader in the tech industry and maintaining that leadership position.
Yeah, I think the main thing to become a leader in the tech industry, I would say like three things. First of all, you have to be an expert in a domain, like pick a domain you're passionate about, right? You know, if it's the semiconductor industry or like consumer tech or, you know, data science, whatever it is, and become an expert and be known as an expert, right? That's the first thing. That almost has to become table stakes where you say, yeah, check the box, I got that. The second thing I would say is being confident in yourself. You know, there's a difference between being confident and being arrogant. And I would say it's a fine line you have to walk. And so I would say be confident, meaning like know what you're strong in and don't be shy. You know, that is the second thing. Third thing, if you want to be a leader, you have to enjoy being with people. Because ultimately your job as a leader is not to do everybody's job. Your job is to inspire others to do their best. And that means you have to they have to follow your vision, especially in a startup, right? Like, why would people leave big companies to come work for me at NEO or at Fable? You know, you have to, as a leader, inspire them. You have to project a big vision. So if you don't enjoy being with people and working with people, then I would say don't try to be a people leader.
Thank you so much.
Tristan, I still have you in there. I am gonna actually I'm looking for Kenza, but in the meantime, I think I'm gonna ask Nitin to come and join us. And before I do, as I'm looking at the same time, Padma, I thought it was interesting that people were asking, how did you get the money for Fable?
Yeah, I raised money. I just closed my seed round, and I have amazing investors. It was fascinating because I was raising money on Zoom. It was like an interesting experience. I just started fundraising June, I think, and it went super fast. I closed my round really fast. But
Amazing.
yeah, I have 3 big VCs from Silicon Valley and 3 angel investors, big angel investors that came into my round. I was doing product demos on Zoom or video conferencing, and I was like sharing my deck, and it was like, normally you would do this while, face to face, but it's an interesting experience. But yeah, I raised money from the venture world.
Fantastic. And my apologies, Kenza, you were already online. So I am, I can't keep up with everything. So thank you for your patience. And look where you are.
Hello, Padma. I just want to say thank you. It was wonderful to hear your story. My question was, who was your most effective mentor and why?
Yeah, I think I've had a couple of mentors. I would say mentors, I would define mentors as not just maybe one person, but group of people that I learn different things from. Most effective, I would say, are people who listen to me, like who were there for me when I needed them. It was less, I think, effective when I had like structured conversations, like every month have a call with my mentor. One of my most effective mentors actually helped me get through what I thought was a big failure in my career. At one point, I was asked to go run this project, and the project wasn't working out. And talking about what Sujay was asking me earlier about quitting in your career. At that time, I thought, oh my God, I need to quit. And so my mentor actually helped me sort through that, and it pushed me. I mean, he actually like told me, the decisions you have to make, you just don't want to make them. You're calling me because you want me to tell you what to do, and versus you deciding, because sometimes we call up our mentors to, because we don't want to make the decision. We want someone else to tell us what to do. And so he was pushing that decision back on me. Sometimes the most effective mentors challenge you. They're not just there to agree with you. They will disagree with you and they will push you. Probably I got the most value out of that kind of a relationship. So when you choose a mentor, choose someone who's not just agreeing with you and giving you pats on the back, but will push you, will criticize you, but they're doing that with the interest that they're helping you grow.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Fantastic. Whose screen is on? Want to introduce yourself?
Hi,
Yeah.
Nitin, I think.
Yeah, Nitin.
Oh, you're muted, Nitin.
We just can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Maybe your headset's not plugged in.
Do you want to check on that? And in the meantime, who can go
Pamela?
next?
Looks like Pamela's ready.
Yeah,
Pamela.
Pamela Lee.
Hi, my name is Pamela. Nice to meet you. First of all, thank you so much for coming. It was really inspiring to hear your story. I really loved Fable's mission on focusing on mental wellness, and I was wondering if there are any opportunities for students to be a part of Fable.
Yeah, definitely. I think next year we'll be ready for internships next summer.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Nitin, you want to try again?
No.
Not working. I'll see if I can't find your question and then we'll go ahead and ask. Kenza, have you already gone?
Yeah, she did.
All right. Yes, that is true. One of the other questions was on Fable. How does Fable make money?
So Fable is a membership model. And so basically, once we launch, you will pay a membership. It's quite reasonable. For students, we actually give a 50% discount. And so it would be like $35 or so a year. So roughly $3 a month you would pay to be on Fable, and then off you go. You pick the book, you buy the book you want, and you form your group, your social group, and you start reading with your friends.
That's Fantastic. Nitin, should we give it Nitin one more time?
Yeah, Nitin, you want to try? You're now on mute.
That's all right. We'll keep you around though. Vishal, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and go if you wouldn't mind.
And then also you could ask Nitin's question. I mean, it is in the, we can
Well,
just ask one.
Actually, would Dean Liu, would you ask it? I just don't see it in front of
Oh,
me.
sure. Okay, so Nitin's question is, when starting Fable, how did you judge the potential of the market and the interest from potential customers? Like, how did you
That's such a great question. Yeah, so I literally spent almost, I would say 8 months by myself, thinking about the company, thinking about the product. I first kind of had a vague idea, and then I did a ton of user research. Like I would call people, talk to them about, do they read? How much do they read? Why are they not reading more? What would make them read more? So ton of market research. Then I talked to a bunch of entrepreneurs, even people who started companies in this space. I talked to the founder of Goodreads. I talked to people who worked in the reading and the, other sorts of like mental wellness. I talked to the founders of Headspace, companies like this. And I think that's the good thing about being in Silicon Valley is you have access to other entrepreneurs. And so then I tested the idea with the people, with companies. Big part of what we sell also to companies. So we went to companies and asked them, if you had a product like this, do you think it'll benefit your employees? And so yeah, it took me almost 8-9 months of research before I actually incorporated the company and started the company.
Fantastic. There's a question from Chandu Zhu.
Shangdu, do you want to go?
Usually I ask people if they want to go, but I didn't ask Chandu. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. I think I asked this like a few minutes ago. Let me check.
You're very soft. Can you speak up?
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Is this a question I asked like, wait, let me try to find it.
Actually, I'll ask for you, and then you can
No,
add.
I think I was asking, like, sorry for interrupting, by the way. I was asking him, like, what do you think is the most important thing for entrepreneurs to know, like, that most people don't know when they're getting started, like, with entrepreneurship? So what's the most important thing that you don't know?
Thing an entrepreneur should know? Is that the question?
Yeah, like that most people don't know about.
That most people don't know about.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I think most important thing an entrepreneur should know is that starting a company is really, really hard. Building a company is really, really hard. And you have to be really resilient, because I kind of describe it this way. In a startup, your days go like this. Like one day you're super happy, next day you're super depressed, next day you're super happy. Whereas in a big company, you're more stable. And so people usually, the glamour of a startup is like, oh, you get rich and you make a lot of money and you'll become a billionaire and it's all going to be fun. And the reality is just the opposite. There will be days when you don't know if you're going to make payroll. So I would say people always underestimate the real difficulty of it. It can be anything from just you're spending days recruiting people. Like I spend all my time these days interviewing people, convince them to leave big companies to come work with me, or you're raising money, or you're getting your product out, or you're there are a lot of bugs in the software and you're trying to bug fix. And so there's just so many things you're dealing with. I would say people underestimate how hard it is. So as an entrepreneur, especially if you're the founder, you have to make sure you are strong and you are resilient.
So like, what would you say is the biggest, like the tripping point for most people, like where they mess up?
Yeah, they mess up usually, I would say, in that scale. I think people are pretty good at getting like the first product out, like MVP out, like V1 out. And then you go from V1 to something that's better. And usually people trip up there. And then going from like $1 million revenue to 10 million, right? So once you get that figured out, then I think you're okay.
I see. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm going to ask a question from Isabella. She's got a lot of background noise. You talked about the benefits of experiencing different industries. Is this done at a sacrifice of gaining expertise in a specific field? And is it ever too late to switch between industries in one's career?
It's first of all, I'll answer backwards. It's never too late to switch careers. I think you can always switch careers. I think it's something you have to be willing to learn, though. I think even for me, right? Like I was a top executive in a large company, and then being an entrepreneur, I don't even have an assistant. I do everything myself now, and so you relearn. You have to be willing to relearn things when you're switching careers. Do you sacrifice becoming a deep expert? To some extent, you may. I think you have to have enough deep expertise in one area and then switch. I always use this formula that you have to know when you're switching industries, you have to know 70% of the content of the job and 30% is new to you and you're learning that, right? Like, so when I went from Cisco to Neo, I had never built a car before. I didn't know anything about building the car itself, but I knew a lot about the technology that was going to be going into that car. And so 70%, make sure you know 70% of the job and 30% of it is new. Then you think you avoid that pitfall of sacrificing expertise or actually taking such a risk that you're going to fail in your new career. You avoid that risk as well.
So we have about a good 5 minutes left. I have a bunch of questions still, but Dean Liu, in case I missed something, you're such an eagle eye, let me know. But I have Destiny and Alan kind of teed up.
Maybe just to follow up on one of the answers that Padma gave, can you say something about building a team? Isn't that one of the keys to having a successful startup? And then the things that you're looking for in a team change as the company becomes more mature, right?
Yeah, that's very true. And you know this too, Sujay. I think you built companies and, I think most people think of you as the dean, but you built companies and got them acquired and had a great career as well. One of the key things is hiring and, recruiting great people. I personally get involved in every person that we hire up to a point when we get to about 100 people. I think that matters because the first 100 people hire the next 1,000 people. And so they have to be the right kind of a profile. It's not that the people are good or bad, but I think you have to have the right kind of complementary skills. And I always look for people, the early people that we hire, are they resilient? Like, can they deal with the fact that there's a lot of chaos in a startup and people have to be willing to go with the flow? Like one day we're doing this, next day we're doing that. That's really, really important. And the type of people change as well. And then when you scale, you want people that are more involved with process and structure and making sure things get replicable, right? Like you want the product to be consistent. So yeah, that definitely is very important.
Yeah, I think that just makes me think that the experience that our students are all going through now, right? You're basically learning how to learn because you're working more independently. That is one of the skills that Padma pointed out is important. And then being resilient. If you can, get through this semester successfully, that will prepare you all the more, right, for success in the industry. So, anyway, just something for students.
I think that was a great point.
Yes. Okay, let's go back to the last couple of student questions.
Destiny, would you like to come on?
Yes. Hello. Thank you, Padma, for coming to talk to us today. The question I had is in relation to something you said earlier on being a part of the community and the space that you're trying to grow in. So especially in the STEM field, there's a lot of smart and great, already successful student leaders. So my question is, how can we support each other? And also, how can we involve ourselves in the community without feeling so competitive?
Yeah, no, those are great questions. I think you should definitely support each other, especially during these times. One of the points I made is being empathetic. Listen, I think the era you guys are going to be leading in is different from the era I grew up in, right? Like if you look back to the next 10 years versus the last 10 years or last 20 years or last 30 years where I've spent my career, these days, leaders have to be empathetic. There is just so much going on. I think that is something you can emphasize in your community that you belong to. There's a lot of smart people out there, but just being smart is not enough anymore. If you want to be a leader, I think it's being caring, being able to listen, being able to understand different perspectives, So you do all have to support each other, I think, in the community to be able to do that. How do you not make it super competitive? It's not about, a community is not about who wins and who loses. A community is about you all win together, right? It's actually one of the most important points when you start a career. You learn that. It's not that you're an individual contributor. Your whole team has to succeed. My whole company has to win for us to survive as a company. If the product is great and you know the quality of the software is not that great, we don't win. I think bringing up those points in the community diffuses the competitiveness. It's not a win-lose thing. You know, it's not like you get a great grade and somebody else fails, right? If the community is all about helping each other for the greater good, that I hopefully will take the pressure off of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have 2 more questions, and I'm not sure how your time is. I want to be cognizant. Maybe you can answer questions offline, but let's go with Vishal, if you're ready with your question. And if Vishal's not ready, let's go with Curtis.
Hi, Curtis.
Hi. Hi, sorry, I had a, oh wait, yeah, go ahead. I just had a small Wi-Fi problem and I like lagged out for a bit, but could you repeat what you wanted me to do? Sorry about that.
Oh, I thought you might have a question.
Yeah, I guess it kind of got
Answered?
Yeah, answered already. It was more about like,
no worries. We're good then, Vishal.
Yeah.
That's great, and I'm glad you're back in, and we'll go over to Curtis.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Hi, Padma. Thank you so much for talking to us. Your talk was very inspirational, and I learned a lot from this talk. My question to you is, what do you think the most important characteristic of a successful startup is? Is it the idea? Is it the team synergy? Is it the timing, or even, you know, gaining the capital needed to execute your idea? What do you think is the most important part to creating a successful startup?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. I think so. The idea, in the sense, the idea is important, but it is not enough. You know, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient, I would say. Meaning, you do need to have an idea. Usually, my opinion, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs with different schools of thought. My opinion is that the idea needs to be simple and it's solving a complex problem, right? And if you have a complex problem and a complex solution, then it's going to take forever to get that product out to the market. And so I picked a very simple idea to solve a big problem called mental wellness. So I think the first thing you have to look for is a simple idea that can be applied to a big problem. But more important than the idea is like getting the product market fit, as it's called, meaning like getting the product to apply to a segment in the market that is unique. You know, that I think is probably the most important thing. And you get early signs of it, like, are people trying it? Are they engaged with it? Those are all early signs of the product market fit. That's super important. After that, I think it's the talent to me, right? Like if you hire great people, like because you will have to pivot and course correct as a startup, because no entrepreneur I know says that they started and they executed, you know, according to the plan that they started with. Things change. And so if you have a great team, then you can adjust. So I would say those are the 3 things.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think we are going to leave Dean Liu, just to put her on the spot a little bit, with the absolute last question.
Really?
And then, yes, I think I am.
I think I pretty much exhausted all the questions, but yeah, I mean, maybe the last, a very common question at these talks is like, if you, looking back about how that you've given us a lot of good advice, what would you say to your 20-year-old self? Like if you're a student, like what advice, key advice? I know you've already had some.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking back. What would I do differently for my 20-year-old self? I would say I would have taken risks sooner in my career. I think in the early parts when I was maybe 20 years old, and maybe because I was an immigrant coming to the US, I had constraints, like I had to get a job and I had to start working. I don't know, but regardless, I was probably in the first 5 to 10 years in my career, I think I was somewhat risk averse. And I think maybe after I got settled into my career a little bit, I started to take risks. If I had to tell myself something different, I would say I would have taken risks sooner. I would have said, push boundaries, go up there, go do different things sooner than I did.
Excellent advice. I fully agree.
Yeah, great. No, thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Here, I've been like playing with my sound effects. I just want to.
That's wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, Padma. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah.
And thank you all to all the students for really great questions. It's great to see that you're all taking Padma's advice to heart. And I think if you do, you will be successful and happy and make a positive difference in this world. So thank you all. Look forward to the changes that you all will make as future engineering leaders.